Welcome everyone to Talk Back. It's Monday, December 15th, 2025, a consequential day and a consequential series of days that we've had in this country. I'm so lucky today to be able to talk to somebody who's doing something about everything, who we're so lucky to have in Connecticut, fighting for Connecticut and the rest of the country, our Connecticut Attorney General, William Tong. Good morning,
Good morning,
Attorney.
Sheila. Great to see you.
It's always great to see you, and your plate is so full. But I am sending greetings from when I spoke to people and said I'm interviewing the Attorney General. He's great. Tell him to keep fighting for us. We're so lucky to have him, and there are so many people in our state thankful that you're in the job that you are and doing what you're doing. And as I told you before we started, I don't know how you have time to sleep. There are so many consequential issues, and I'm not even going to begin with what my first question was about your being elected as the president of the, I'm getting the title, the president of the National Association of Attorneys General. I'm going to start that second because of the events of the last weekend. I know, coincidentally, that you are an alum of Brown University, and the things that have happened in Providence and in Australia remind us again of how gun violence is affecting this country. And I know that when you were in the legislature, you did a lot with the gun violence laws that Connecticut was a pioneer on, but we're not alone. There are other states and that are making the problem worse in many ways. What's your comment on what's going on? And we
Look,
always thought, Brown, I'm sure thought, we're Providence, we're New England. It's not going to happen here. But
right.
we thought that in Connecticut, and then we had Newtown.
Let me just say, first of all, thank you, Sheila. It's great to see you. Great to see the viewers. I think I've been on here a bunch of times going
A
back
bunch,
many
yeah,
years now.
yeah.
And let me say happy Hanukkah to you and your family, and happy holidays and everybody. If you celebrate Christmas, we're all scrambling we just got a tree up the other night. We're a little late this year. And let me just say thank you for those very generous comments. And all I can say is it's a great honor and privilege to be your Attorney General. I'm really lucky. And my wife says you got to be more grateful. And I am ever grateful. Let me just start on, it's been a tough few days, and it reminds me, if I may, my worst day in public service, I just want to recap, was a day that I went out for a walk, legislature was in, and I came back, and there are all these people on the second floor, which is where the House of Representatives is in Hartford, outside of the chamber. But it was packed, but there was this murmur, right? It was it was quiet, eerily quiet. People were whispering. And I was like, what's going on here? Why so many people? And why such a hush? And I realized very quickly as I made my way through the crowd, trying to get back to the chamber to get to my desk, that the parents from Sandy Hook were there. And I saw so many people with tears in their eyes, just trying to support them and hear from them. And this was during our effort to pass the post-Sandy Hook reforms, which I was a part of on the Judiciary Committee. And so not only, did we experience something like what we experienced so many years ago in Newtown, but it's important to note that Sunday was the anniversary of Newtown.
Yes. Yes.
And so we have that, and then to see what happened on my former college campus is beyond heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. I have a college sophomore. It is beyond scary. And then, of course, it was the first night of Hanukkah yesterday.
Yeah, last night, right?
And
First candle was last night.
yeah. And then for there to be an attack by a father and a son, allegedly, in Australia at a celebration of Hanukkah on a beach by a Chabad in Australia is also just gut-wrenching to see that on Hanukkah, and to have it happen And people in the Jewish community clearly across the globe have a target on their backs. So many people do right now. But it reminds me of, you said nice things about me in this job. It reminds me of how important this job is and how much work Monday morning, how much work I have to do to try to keep people safe.
You know, I interviewed one of the parents from Sandy Hook years ago after it happened, and I interviewed him on the way to DC. They were going down as a group to DC because the Congress was debating a gun safety bill. It never passed. I don't know
Yes.
if you remember that.
Yes.
They came home deflated, disappointed, disgusted with our national Congress, and things haven't changed that much.
No.
They passed some small measure a few years ago under President Biden. It was a very minor thing. What do you say to, I guess, you're a parent. I'm a grandparent. I've got 6 grandchildren at all levels from junior high school, and college. What do you say to us when we worry so much? And now you're worrying about your daughter. What do you do?
Hug your
What do we do as citizens?
hug your kids, do everything you can to keep them safe, keep them close. And the worst thing I think that could happen to a parent, obviously, is to lose a child. That's the worst thing that can happen to a human being, frankly. And it just, it's a reminder that you've got to do everything you can to protect our kids and know that no one should have to meet that fate.
But how do we change the culture in America, the gun culture that distinguishes us from most of the rest of the world?
Yeah.
I think I read there were 156 shootings in schools in America in 2025.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it goes beyond the people that perpetrate the shootings, right? I'm a hunter in that I like bird hunting. And there are a lot of people who are responsible and who are sports people. And, this is a very positive part of their lives. But there is apart from those people, there is a broader sickness about not just the shooters themselves, but about gun ownership and the overall lawlessness that big segments of the gun owning community endorse, subscribe to, embrace. And I don't know, makes them feel strong, makes them feel powerful. It's part of their identity. Whatever it is, it's a sickness. It's an obsession. And I think we have to be honest about that and call it for what it is. It's a really bad and corrosive strain in our national personality and character.
But the interesting thing, Attorney General, is that years ago, I've read the NRA was in favor of more gun safety. Something switched in the politics that made them so adverse to any new laws. And of course, what we have at the top of our government doesn't help the situation either.
No,
right?
What we're seeing with this president, and let me just say about the president, he is a symptom in large part, and not a cause. A lot of people want to blame him for what he has wrought, and sure, he's responsible, but he reflects the American people. They elected him. And so to the extent that people want to absolve themselves of responsibility for this result, don't. I don't. I didn't vote for him, but I'm still responsible. And because my candidate didn't win, and whatever I could have done different, I didn't do it. And so there's a larger problem with the American people and how they approach this. And we have to look at ourselves and reckon with it. I mean, how many children have to die? Clearly, many. That's the answer before we actually do something. They're still dying.
Yeah.
They were in final exams, for crying out loud. That building at Brown where they went, I know that building. I've been there a million times. I've walked past that building, that area a million times. Wherever the shooter ran, I walked down those streets a million times. And I've been in Newtown a million times. I mean, this is our home. This is where we're from. And this is who we've become.
So we were pioneers in the legislation that you helped put through in Connecticut, but it doesn't work when you've got 50 states and people can come from anywhere bringing
Yeah.
ammunition guns. So
It doesn't work when large parts of the population just don't care.
yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, let's hope that this will be the impetus for some new legislation. Let's hope. I know Connecticut will be in the forefront of it, but let's just hope and pray that something new happens to change things.
Yeah.
Let's move on. So what I was going to start first was the fact that we have to be proud in Connecticut that we have the president of the National Association of Attorneys General. You were just elected and installed, right? Just
Like I
well,
needed more work, right, Sheila? I mean,
well,
come on.
you were president-elect, and so and then I read that when you're president-elect, I want to know what your duties are. However, I read that you have to have a platform, that every attorney general, president-elect comes in with a message, a platform, and you have chosen driving down costs for American families. So
Yeah.
tell about that, how you got elected
So
and how you doing this.
I'm focused on all the ways that attorneys general can drive down costs for American families. And this goes beyond affordability. This goes beyond consumers. Because the reason why I don't like the affordability frame is because it suggests to me that there's this box of costs that every family can manage. And that if we just make the right decisions and the right sacrifices, we can have a box of costs and expenses that are affordable, and we can have some breathing room, and we cannot feel so squeezed all the time. But I think you and I both know that's just not true. There are many things that we need, no matter what we do, that can't fit in that box that we can pay for. For me, it's college tuition. It's utility rates. It's the cost of food. And for me, my wife and I, we still buy a 3-pound tin of coffee at Costco. It was $12.99 no more than a year ago. It's $23.99.
Wow.
And that's not the Starbucks stuff. That's the house Costco coffee, which is good. It's good. But to go up $10, and multiply that by so many other products, it's not even close to affordable. And so we're focused on what we're going to do, what we are doing to drive down costs. I got a big consumer protection lawsuit I'm announcing today around rideshare. So pay attention to that. And then I'm leading the national generic drug price fixing case. We've talked about that before, to drive down drug prices, hopefully long term. And I'm fighting for more wind power so that we can build that Revolution Wind project, which is off the coast of New London. And why is that important? Because we need more generation. We need more making of power. And if we make more power, we can try to bend that cost curve that's going so high.
Right.
We're fighting healthcare costs every single day, and health insurance.
We may have another shutdown if nothing is done about those credits for the Obamacare prices, right? What do you think of that? Is that
what I think is that people are going to die. That's what I think. People are going to suffer and they're going to die because if they don't have health insurance and they don't go to the doctor, they're going to get sick.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna. So you're framing this as keeping costs down rather than using that term affordability, which everyone seems to be kicking around these days, Democrats and Republicans arguing over it.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, some of these initiatives that the National Association, you have 50 attorneys general in America.
56.
Oh,
50
but that's
states.
right.
You
The
got
outer, right,
territories and the
right.
District
Okay.
of Columbia.
Right, right. Sorry, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you have bipartisan support? I imagine on the economic things like cost down, you have bipartisanship. Do you have bipartisanship on other issues that you're working on?
Yeah. So on all of these issues. So for example, we just authored a letter about AI and chatbots, artificial intelligence. And if you're watching this and you're not spooked or scared about what AI is doing, artificial intelligence, and what it can do, you need to pay attention.
Yeah.
And what in particular is happening is people, especially children, are engaging with these chatbots, and they're so lifelike and can say and lead you to believe so many awful things that it's really dangerous. In Connecticut, we had a guy, I think not much older than me, in a murder suicide with his mom. And I think he engaged with artificial intelligence and a chatbot. So we attorneys general are coming together to protect kids and to keep people safe by pushing hard against Congress to do something about this. And if Congress isn't going to do something, we've got to do them in the states.
I was going to say, isn't there a debate about whether we need just national laws about this or state laws? And every state
We
has
definitely
their own.
need national laws, but if national laws are not going to happen, and they may not, then the states have to act.
Right. So, the other thing that you're busy with, it's to me, it's unbelievable how many issues you're dealing with on the national level in fighting the things that the Trump administration is doing against the rule of law in our country.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, have we ever had a situation in our history where we've had to fight on these so many fronts against somebody who's violating the rule of law almost every day?
Let me just say this, a little perspective. So yes, I have sued the president 42 times since January. That's in this term. Remember the last term we sued him over 100 times, and we were successful 70-80% of the time. And this time is no different. We've been successful in a lot of our lawsuits. I just won a big one on FEMA and grants related to storm resiliency and coastal flooding and non-coastal flooding in the interior of our state. So we're winning these cases in large part, but it's not great. And a little perspective, though. We've been in dark places before in this country, and I don't have to tell you. We've been in very dark places in the world, of course, in the Holocaust and slavery. And then here, 1968, the McCarthy era. America is a great, wonderful place and still the most powerful and prosperous nation on earth. But we are capable of great cruelty, especially to one another. And this president reflects that. So we've got to fight him. So in some ways, there have been darker periods in history, but in its own way, this is a very dangerous period. And so the president represents, obviously, a clear and present danger to our democratic institutions, and we have to fight tooth and nail to maintain them. And that's what I'm doing every single day.
So on so many fronts, the cases that you're bringing, you're getting positive results on the district court level and then on the appellate court level.
Yeah.
And then they have to go up to the Supreme
Yeah.
Court. And the Supreme Court has not follow the district court rulings in many cases. And we're nervous about what they're going to do on birthright citizenship, on the tariffs. Talk about some of these big cases
Yeah.
that are going to be heading to the Supreme Court and what your thinking is on that.
So those two cases are our cases. The
Right.
birthright case was the first case we filed, and the tariffs case is the state's case. And I think the Supreme Court's going to do the right thing on both those cases. But it's no doubt a tough slog. There are two justices that are never going to be with us, Thomas and Alito. And then, I think the next level is Gorsuch, where he's kind of open on textual readings of the Constitution and statutes. He's a textualist, so you're hoping he reads the words of the 14th Amendment and stays with us on birthright and on tariffs. This is a statutory construction case, which for listeners means we're reading the language of the statute, of the law, the federal law, which is the International Economic Emergency Act, or IEPA. And it says nothing about tariffs. It doesn't give the president any authority over tariffs. So Gorsuch is who you're hoping for if there's a pickoff. And then there's the three. They're not moderates, or I'll call two. The two men, which are Kavanaugh and the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice is, more of a disappointment than a lot of us had hoped. But he's gettable at times. And then, of course, everything rides on Amy Coney Barrett. And I just met her. The attorneys general were just in Washington when I became president of the National Association. And we went over the Supreme Court and we had a private meeting with her in the court. And she's obviously extraordinarily bright, but she has a point of view. So we've got to convince her that she needs to stay faithful to the text and not go too far out of it. It's funny when you're me and you're a Democrat and a progressive, and you're the one making the originalist argument, the textualist argument. Just read the words.
Right.
Don't get fancy.
Right.
So, the thing to keep in mind, though, is everybody they say, yeah, William, you're winning at the district court level, even the Court of Appeals level. And then they go, but the Supreme Court, it's all going to heck. Two things. One is you got to go there and fight your fight in front of the Supreme Court. They're smart, they're engaged, they're listening. You got to try to carry the day. That's number one. Number two is not every case goes to the Supreme Court.
Right. I get, yeah.
Okay? And a lot of these cases we're winning and it stops.
And in some cases, the president has stopped the policy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Just stop. Yeah. Yeah. In order to stop the case.
So we are winning.
Well, what about, so I'm thinking about the issues that they just had a hearing last week on whether or not the president has the right to fire commissioners from various agencies.
Yeah.
Does it look to you like the Supreme Court? So in that area of presidential authority, they are expanding the powers of the executive.
That does not look good.
And we have a Congress right now that has completely folded in terms of being responsible for the Article 1 things that are going on in this country and letting the president have his way, right?
Yeah.
Is that one of the most dangerous areas of expansion of executive power?
It's not great.
Yeah.
And this is so just to nerd out a little bit with our listeners, this emanates from a theory, a point of view that the Supreme Court, a majority of them, I think, subscribe to, which is this idea of the unitary executive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what does that mean? That means that they think under Article 2 of the Constitution that the founders meant to vest all executive power in the president, with limited checks and balances by the Congress, which is in Article 1.
Article 1, yeah. Did they mean something by calling it Article 1?
But right, the founders made Congress Article 1, and Article 1, Section 8 gave Congress the power to appropriate money, and it's called the spending clause, because the founders did not want a king. Like, there's no other version of American history. There's only that one. They did not want a king because we had a revolution over it. We revolted against a king. They wanted a strong Congress and a weak executive. And for a Supreme Court that's so preoccupied with history and tradition, hello, the history and tradition of this country is that we don't want strong executive power, and they're giving it to him.
Right, right. And they're making they're harming the Congress's right to appoint regulatory authorities to have expertise on many issues, right? That's another loss that we're getting with this court.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, what do you think are the most serious affronts to our rule of law and our democracy that Trump and his people are putting forth? What's the most serious
They're
thing?
all serious. What I tell people to think about is not ranking which one is worse than the other, because they're all bad. What's important is that people are getting hurt. This isn't academic, right? We're not at the Federalist Society having a debate about the original interpretation of this clause or that clause. If you're an immigrant, even if you're a green card holder, or frankly a citizen, you're worried. If you're a Somali American, someone could pick you up anywhere and just ship you out.
Yeah.
And that's really scary. If you came here like we did, running for your lives, and then you have to contend with this. I mean, it's like so many layers of re-traumatization of people, right? My grandparents ran for their lives. And Sheila, I'm guessing that your family, big segments of your
my
family ran for their lives too.
My mother escaped Ukraine in 1921 during
Yeah.
the Russian Revolution, the Civil War, where Jews were being victimized,
Yeah.
assaulted,
When
killed.
were they not, by the way? When were they
Okay,
when were they not? And
that's you know, there was a great article in the Hartford Courant just this weekend about how so many immigrants, people who think they're here legally with green cards, with asylum issues, they thought were all done, they are afraid. I don't know if you caught that article in the Courant, but it showed
what's
that,
so shocking is that there are people who are in line
yeah,
waiting for their naturalization ceremony, and they're being pulled out of line.
right.
So this is not just an offense to the rule of law. You're hurting people. And if you support this president, you support that. I am sorry. Yes, you do. You don't get to pick and choose. This is what you signed up for if you voted for him. That's the deal.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, talking about hurting and the cruelty, what is happening with the transgender issue? I know during the campaign, there were like 50,000 ads. That was like it seems like so many people voted on these culture issues while they voted against their
Sheila,
self-interest on the economic issues.
Sheila, how many children do you have?
6 grandchildren.
6 grandchildren. Okay. What would you do if your child or grandchild struggled and was diagnosed with gender dysphoria? What would you do?
I would hug them and love them and do whatever I could to make their lives better.
And fight for them every single day.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's what these parents are doing, you know? And so if you're a kid, I know people struggle with it. I struggle with it too. I was one of the first legislators in this country to vote for transgender rights. It wasn't easy. Okay. But it comes down to, A, do we discriminate against people? Is that my job as a government official? No, right? That's easy. But number 2 is, if somebody's hurting themselves, or God forbid, wants to take their own life because they don't feel like they're in the right body, yeah, okay, I've never felt that emotion, but I don't want that person to die. I don't want that person to hurt themselves. And
that's
God
where
forbid they're my kid.
yeah, and that's where the social media comes in also, because
It's like,
yeah, that's influencing so many people to hurt themselves because they are outcasts, and the social media. I know you're working hard on that issue,
very hard.
right?
That's
Yeah,
going to be the fight of our time. Artificial intelligence, social media, the ways in which social media harm young people, right, with all the bad content, but even worse, the ways in which they harm adults in our democracy. This is going to be the battle, and I don't have good answers, because
how do parents? How are we able, as parents, grandparents, teachers, to monitor what our kids are doing and watching? And it's just they've got those cell phones attached to them like it's part of the body. How do you monitor
Well,
and
they
supervise that?
how about us? I have two of these,
Yeah, yeah, I
you
got
know?
one. Yeah, yeah,
So we're all addicted. And that's the basis of the lawsuit. The basis of the lawsuit is they purposefully addict us to these devices. They know it's addictive.
yeah,
And so the way they make money is if you and I and our kids and grandkids are glued to our phones, like never taking our eyeballs off the screen, that's how they make money, which is why we've got to sue them to change their behavior so that people aren't so locked in. Speaking of Australia, the Australians now are banning social media for young people. So let's see how that goes. I'd love to see if that's working.
how does that
I don't
work
think you
when
can
when
I don't
the
think there should be a
internet
single
is?
cell phone on a campus, on any school campus.
Yeah, that's amazing that they can do that. Well, I know when they had their mass shooting over 20 years ago, 1, 2, 3, they passed laws, they had the buyback program, and they have had infrequent mass shootings, nothing like the level of what we've had in our country. Because when something happens in our country, we say we have to take time to
Yeah,
pray,
I know.
and we
Yeah,
don't have time to talk
yeah,
politics. We have to
yeah,
just pray
yeah.
first, and
Let's put the
you know,
politics aside and not deal with
yeah.
the problem. Yes,
So
exactly.
again, what are the, just to summarize on the various cases against the Trump administration, what are the key ones that you're waiting decisions on and looking forward
Yeah,
to?
birthright is a big one. The tariffs are a big one. We have so many of these spending cases that a lot of those have gotten resolved because the administration has stopped the policy. We just won on wind policy. He issued a blanket executive order, not directly related to Revolution Wind. We won that case, but the wind executive order was trying to ban wind power across the country. We won that. So birthright and the tariffs are big cases because they're sort of bellwether cases. They're
Yeah,
whether the Supreme Court's going to take the text of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution seriously. And why does it matter, Sheila? It matters because without the 14th Amendment and the language of the 14th Amendment guaranteeing citizenship to people born here in America, to immigrant parents, I'm not an American.
mhm,
I'm a
yeah.
birthright citizen.
Well, somebody said that makes Trump's children not American either because it's great.
Right, 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 right.
So what about, yeah, you mentioned all of the funding issues where some of them have been resolved because the administration's going to continue the funding on things. What about all the mess that Musk made that he got involved in and
Yeah, it's
violated
over
all kind of,
already, right?
yeah,
He came in and tore up the federal government, fired a
yeah,
lot of people, and then even before the end of the year, they're like, "All right, it's over." Uh,
yeah,
what was the point of all that? Except, I think, to give Elon Musk and Palantir and a bunch of private sector companies access to our personal data and information about states. All of
mm,
this is highly proprietary and sensitive information, and they're collecting all of it and putting into a massive database. So, that's another fight that we have to take on and make sure that we protect the American people and our personal information.
yeah. And I know another issue that you want to always talk about are energy costs. I mean, they're constantly going up in Connecticut. With Eversource is constantly raising their rates. What are the different initiatives that you're working on with that?
Yeah, not just Eversource, United Illuminating, of
Yeah,
course, and related companies. But since I became Attorney General, we have people in my office who fight utilities every single day. They fight for ratepayers every single day. And these folks, my utilities group, they've recovered or they've stopped rate increases of more than $700 million since I became Attorney General. And so these are additional fees and rates that we don't see on our bills because we are successful in stopping them. So, but long term, the only answer is generation. We know that. We could fight the utilities every single day and try to get them to keep their costs down, but it costs what it costs from a certain perspective to procure and distribute that power. Remember, Eversource doesn't make power. They're not allowed to.
Right.
Eversource distributes power. They're an electric distribution company, as is United Illuminating. And so at the end of the day, power costs what it costs. And we don't have enough sources of power and enough diversity in our power generation so that we can have more competition and more options. If you're tied to nuclear and natural gas, which is what we're tied to, nuclear is relatively stable and cheap, but natural gas is like this, especially when there's a war in Ukraine.
Yeah. Another issue. So I know the big initiative is protecting kids from AI and other issues, social media. But as someone involved with Safe Futures and the issues of domestic violence, I'm happy to report that Safe Futures now has taken on the initiative of working with elder abuse and elder
Yes.
law, which is
Yes.
something and I know that you have worked with that. Would you tell us all of the initiatives? Because elder abuse is costing billions of dollars. It's not just physical abuse, emotional, sexual, but it's also the financial, the exploitation, the fraud that is just eating away at so many seniors' pocketbooks. So talk about that and what we can do to help that.
So it is estimated that financial fraud and abuse against people over 60 is at least $36 billion a year nationwide. But here's the asterisk on that number. Really only like 1 in 44 cases of that kind of fraud and abuse gets reported. So the number's got to be much bigger than $36 billion. And what's really sad and hard is that so much of this abuse, a majority of the abuse, comes from people close to the victim.
Right.
Son, daughter, niece, nephew, spouse.
Oh, sometimes they're lawyers, sometimes they're priests,
lawyers,
sometimes
they're
they're spirit.
caretakers.
Yeah. The people that we rely on most and the ones that we often love the most, and because of maybe our infirmities or our mental incapacity, we're unable to report that out of fear and inability. So how do we, and there's so many people, as you said, are in the shadows. How do we reach them? I work with the Agency on Aging. I'm on the Senior Resources Board and Safe Futures, but I always worry about how do we get the word out. I know you have talk about your website and your
So
call. You have an emergency call.
we have a number to the elder justice called the Elder Justice Hotline, and people can call my office and we pick up the phone. And I get out there as much as I can. And of course, on social media and traditional media, I talk about it all the time. The Elder Justice Hotline number, by the way, is 860-808-5555. Not hard to remember. 860.
Can we put that on the screen, studio? Yeah.
Yeah.
Put that on the screen.
If you have any issue at all, call that number. And even if we can't help you, the whole point is to like have one-stop shopping so that we can help direct you to the right resource, the right state agency, the right public official, right? And now, if you're a victim of physical abuse, don't wait to call me. Call the police. And frankly, if someone's stealing money from you, call the police. But as we just said, that's hard for a lot of people because the person abusing them is somebody they love and depend on. And so what I say to people is, even if you're not ready to call the police, just call. Call the number. You don't even have to give your name. Talk to us. Let us know what's going on, and maybe we can point you in the right direction. Start the process. But Sheila, do you know what the biggest scam facing people over 60 in this country is today?
What? Telephone stuff? No.
No, not tax and utility scams, not the grandparent scam. It's the romance scam.
Oh, I've dealt with that. Yes. I had a client who was determined to bring this man she had found in the internet, and he only needed $3,000 to fly from wherever the heck he was to her hometown so they could meet and marry. Yes. Oh, I've heard. Yes. Unbelievable.
Romance scam and its close cousin, unfortunately, it's got a horrific name. It's called pig butchering. And that's when people get you on social media and convince you that you should invest in their investment platform, and that they can make you a lot of money, and people give away their life savings. I mean, we're not talking thousands of dollars, 3,000, that's light touch. We're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars people have
Yeah.
lost right here
Yeah.
in Connecticut.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So how do we fight that? How do we protect them? It's impossible. It's difficult. Uh,
Keep talking to people, get them to focus on it. Look, if you, it's not, if you think about it, it's not hard to perpetrate this scam, because who's more vulnerable than somebody who's alone and looking for somebody, and frankly recently alone, right? If you have been with somebody for 30, 40, 50, 60 years and you lose them, that's really hard. And so you're looking for companionship, for love, and you're very vulnerable, and people can take advantage of you.
Right. Well, on the one hand, I talk about all of the elders who don't have the facility to work, to do internet. They don't have emails. They don't have it. In that way, they're protected somewhat. But then as soon as they get that facility, they can get hurt. They can
And
get,
a lot more people have email and cell phones and social
yeah,
media than you would think. And there are a lot of
yeah,
people over 65 who are like, "Oh, I don't have social media." Yes, you do. You
you got
know,
the,
maybe you don't, you're not on it all day every day like your grandchildren are, but you're there. And even if you don't have an Instagram account, because only the kids do that, and maybe you just have a Facebook account that you forgot about, that you signed up for. Even if you don't have an account, everybody else in your life is talking about
right,
you,
right.
right? So if you have a spouse, for example, who passes away, maybe you don't put it on social media, but your grandkids did.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I think your work going to the senior centers and elevating this issue is very important. And I'm trying to partner with trust and estates lawyers
Yeah.
who can come to the senior centers and help people write their wills, understand end of life issues, how to protect themselves, because that is also very important. But we need to reach more people, and that's how do we reach the people in the
Got to get in
shadows? How
front
do
of them.
we get
Got
them?
to get in front of them.
How do we get them? All right, so can we end this by talking about positives? What are the things that you are hopeful for that you think can make things better? I mean, today we're downcast. We're not celebrating the holiday as festively as we would like. We worry about our democracy, rule of law, the cruelty that this administration is perpetrating on to people, making people afraid. What are the things that we can be hopeful for as we move into the new year?
You know, Sheila, I joke with the Senate President, Marty Looney, who's a lawyer himself from New Haven. He said, "Thank you for all that you're doing." And I had to joke because otherwise you'll cry, right? I said, "You know, Marty, you know, we're in trouble when you're down to the lawyers and the judges." Uh, and in some ways, that's true. But lawyers and judges are working, and the system is holding together. I'm not saying we're winning every case. I'm not saying he's not doing tremendous damage. He is. But our institutions are holding. They're getting carpet bombed every single day. But know that a lot of these institutions, people are working hard, they're fighting hard. I look across the state of Connecticut and all the advocates that are fighting for seniors, fighting against social media harms, fighting for immigrants. You know, we led the way on the SNAP fight, the food stamp fight, and we were successful. And people are getting access to their food stamps, whereas right before Thanksgiving, we were in deep trouble. So what encourages me is that the American people are fighting back, and they want me to fight back. And a lot of those fights are successful. So just keep fighting.
Right. And then, I didn't mention that part of your bio is you are the first Asian American to be elected Attorney General and the first Chinese American to be elected Attorney General in the whole country, right? And so your people have seen discrimination. My
Every
legacy
day,
has
every day.
discrimination, and yet here you are risen to the heights of a very important position. So there's got to be some level of optimism, and we just have to keep the fight going with good people like you.
What a beautiful country we live in. We got to fight for it right now.
Okay. On that note, I think we can say happy holidays to all and
Happy
a great
Hanukkah.
new
Merry
year.
Christmas.
And we'll stay in touch, and we hope every one of the cases that goes to the Supreme Court gets the right decision.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Attorney General William Tong. See you next time
See you
on
next
Talk Back. Bye.